Who's gonna have a good day?
Everybody.
Isn't that the truth? Because solar panels are awesome and they can keep your van's batteries charged perpetually if you do it right. Okay, you don't need gas to charge your batteries with solar panels, and that's cool. And they've just gotten better and cheaper due to mass manufacturing, primarily in China, at the time of this recording at least. So these are Renogy 200W panels, and I started with installing 3 of these on my van and ended up adding a 4th one due to an Amazon shipping error that just ended up with 4 panels at my house. So first things first, we designed a rack to mount the panels to, which is in another video, so you can just see that on the channel already. Hopefully, if not, it will be posted in the future. And then we put our panels on that rack. Everything's aluminum, and these panels have their own frame, so we're just using some of the same extruded aluminum components and self-tapping screws to secure the panels to the rack. Overall, I was really surprised at how simple this installation was relative to other more complicated parts of the electrical system overall. So first things first, after I got my panels laid out and in the orientation I wanted them, I went ahead and got my extruded aluminum fasteners for this Series 10 aluminum installed. You can see those corner brackets there, and this is where I used a self-tapping screw. One thing I learned as I went forward with this process is that it is much easier to pre-drill your holes, even though self-tapping screws are supposed to do that for you. So just learn from my mistakes and pre-drill your holes. Now these solar panels come with their own connectors, but for putting the panels in parallel where you connect all the positive wires together and then all the negative wires together, those didn't work. So I cut off those connectors and used my own, first using a wire solder connector and then an insulator like that. And then I moved to wire glue connectors and electrical tape. To get this panel attached to the other panel, I just used another piece of extruded aluminum hardware that I actually ended up cutting in half, and then some self-tapping screws. Now, I still haven't learned to pre-drill my holes, and so that screw broke off, and I said that sucks, and I was right. Okay, now my original rack was not long enough for the front panel, and as we go into our CAD program here, Shaper 3D, I'm just adjusting the rack assembly so it kind of fits where it is on the van a little bit better. But the short of it is all the panels don't fit, right? Even though the rack is pretty much exactly the size of the roof of the vehicle. However, because it's Series 10 extruded aluminum, I can just kind of add extrusion to this frame, like adding Lego bricks together. So that's what I did. And if we look at this CAD design with the panels installed, which are basically just rectangles on top of the frame, what I found with the positioning of the AC and the vent fan is really only the 2 middle panels fit perfectly within the front to back part of the frame. So the front panel overshoots a little bit in real life, and then when it's drawn in CAD here, it's overshot a lot more than it actually is in real life. So let's get out of CAD and look at that, and we can see that these brackets that extend the assembly out just a few inches don't overshoot the roof that much. It's just barely onto the curvature of the frame, so it's gonna have a bit of an overshot look, but it still should have a good balance between functionality and a clean look, if that makes sense. Okay, clear as mud? Right, let's move on. All right, so here's what it looks like when the panels are installed and connected to the controller. We're in an absorption phase and we see 1 watt, then 3 watts, then 4 watts. So why is the wattage so low? I'm not 100% sure why. It may be because this is shot in the dead of winter and the solar radiation iridescence is the smallest, but it's still pretty low for a 600 watt system. So after I used the paint pen to mark the connectors for testing, I got this thing on the road and drove it halfway across the country to see what kind of solar gain I would get.
Who's gonna have a good day?
Everybody.
Do you like the canyons out there?
Oh yeah.
After this testing trip, I realized it was time to add the 4th 200 watt panel so that we'd have an 800 watt system. And I chose to add it at an angle so that the max air fan could be used without disruption, as you can see in this shot right here. So we cut a couple posts of extruded aluminum, connected them with our Lego-like fasteners, corner brackets, fabricated them to size, tightened them down, and then I actually ended up using a bolt for the attachment on this side of the panel because it lined up with a hole in the existing panel, so I didn't need to drill a hole there. No need for a self-tapping screw then. The driver's side did take a self-tapping screw, so I used that for that assembly. And then we got about 2 fingers of clearance, maybe 2.5 fingers of clearance above the max air fan, so relatively conservative there when it comes to tolerance. So we just did another cut of our custom bracket because I didn't have one that looked like this before I made this cut, and after I made this cut I did. So that's what we're going to use to mount the part of the panel you see in this frame. And you can see we've learned from our mistakes on the first 3. We have pre-drilled our holes, and those self-tapping screws go in so much easier. Then we mark them so that we can easily see if they move. How's the panel feel? Bomber. With the panel mounted, I went ahead and wired it up, negatives to negatives, positives to positives, Wagyu connectors for the win, and then I did a voltage test to just make sure we were at 19.3 volts, which is to spec. After that I buttoned up the wiring and did one more max air fan test. Okay, after that it was time to get in the data and see what the PV yield was. So looking on my energy portal for our system, we can see a max of about 125 watts. Still low. Not sure why it's so low on a 800 watt system. And I know you might be thinking, how are you using 800 watts on a 50 amp charge controller? You're going to exceed that at your incoming voltage. Well, we do have a breaker that will break at 50 amps before it gets to the controller, and right now we have a voltage deficit, or a wattage deficit we're trying to figure out. So we turned to Norel's PV watts calculator to just input our system data and see what it models, and it's saying that we should get 44 kilowatt hours of AC energy in the month of January, which is the lowest month of the year, or second lowest next to December, right when you have the winter solstice. And we can see the hourly output array here, and it ranges from the 60s to like the 200s. And if we go to the summer, we can see 500, 600s. So this system should produce a lot of watts in the summer each hour when it's at its max. So the max this system shows in the Norel model is just under 700 watts. And I'm going to have to wait until the Earth tilts back towards the sun as the seasons progress in its rotation around the sun to really test out this system. So stick around for a future update on its performance, And if you have any thoughts or ideas on how to improve it or maximize it, go ahead and leave those in the comments below. In any case, that's all I got for you today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you around.